Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us at tmosso@the1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions regarding this watch. Today we're discussing something exquisite since by Audemars Piguet's own reckoning, only 378 of these were made over the model's 17-year production run. Launched in 1996, this is the Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar 25820SP. SP is what makes this watch special, as it includes a combination of platinum 950 and stainless steel. It is a traditional 39mm monoblock Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar, just like the first one launched in 1984. And it uses the similar 2120/2802 movement. So we'll talk about what that means in just a moment, but basic sizing. It's still a 39mm. It's quite slim in profile, 9.5 millimeters thick from lug tip to lug tip. If you go lug to lug and don't count the bracelet, it is 48.6 millimeters. We include one link on each side, one intermediate platinum plot. Then the total distance across the wrist is 52.5 millimeters. This is a early E-series watch from the late 1990s, just to give you a sense of when the exact model here was made, and the exact unit in my hand was made in the late 1990s. It was also renewed to an extent I have never seen this year at AP's United States and North American Clearwater, Florida Service Center. So how much money was spent on this watch? You better hold your chest here, because over $30,000 was spent on the service of this watch. The mechanical service was about $2.5 grand, quite reasonable. But this watch received a completely reconstructed bracelet, clasp, dial, brand new from the factory, and an all-new platinum bezel. The bezel by itself in platinum was a 5-figure charge. This is as close as you can get to owning this watch new out of the dealer's case back in the late 1990s. So, 378 made. How many are still in this condition? Maybe a few dozen? Anyway, the watch wears large. Like most Royal Oaks, it wears bigger than its rated size. So though it's a 39, think of it as more of a 41mm round watch. You can see how it straddles my 16cm circumference wrist. It's got a lot of presence. It is thin, it will fit underneath the cuff, and I'm happy to say this bezel, being all new, does not feature any scratches or swirls. It's truly something to behold. And you can see, unlike a conventional Royal Oak bezel, which is usually satinated on the top, the platinum bezels are almost always in full black mirrored polish. Black polish is called black because from any angle except the one reflective angle, it turns black. See how that works? Okay, the bracelet. The bezel's platinum, the crown's steel, the case is steel, the primary links of the bracelet are steel, but the intermediate links are high-polished platinum. Now you can see the finishing of the bracelet here. It normally requires 9 to 11 hours to finish a Royal Oak bracelet, more if platinum is included. It's a beautiful material, but it's a beast to finish. It tends to smear like butter and wear out tools. You can also see that the faceting, beautiful satination on the flank of the bracelet across the top, the swells and the dips over the links. You can see how each one has a little bit of a rolled interior, and the sharpness of the beveling down the side looks like a new bracelet because it is a new bracelet. Removable links fixed by screws. You can see this still has the period style clasp with a single trigger and then an Audemars Piguet single fold logo style clasp internal. That's how it closes. I'm going to pop it back open because I want to. And you can see that everything here has been entirely renewed. It is as rock solid with as little play laterally as the day it left the factory in Les Brassus in the 90s. You can see there are pusher correctors on the flanks of the case, but you can also see that this is old school monoblock Royal Oak case construction. So the case back and the mid case are one piece. That's how Gerald Genta, the original designer, intended the case when he created the first one in 1972. That is no longer how Royal Oaks are made today for the sake of, well, money. But when cost was no object, back in the late 90s, this is how they were made. Turn it around to the crown. The crown is not a screw-down crown, and the watch is 20 meters water resistant, so as with most Royal Oak Perpetual calendars, you just don't want to get it wet. Splashes, washing your hand, rain, that should be fine, but don't submerge it. You can see how beautiful that bezel is. And then you can also see what's not always obvious when we have steel, which is that the bolts in the bezel They're actually made of white gold. It's a lot easier to see when you've got platinum because platinum is purely white, whereas these are a little bit darker and warmer. And you can see that white gold is not perfectly white. You can see that they're also hexagonal, which is the same shape as the crown, so lovely design parallelism. We have a pantograph cut tapisserie, the dial, that is made of 10,000 to 20,000 little dots and textures. And you can see that the hobnail, which is cut on a mimicry engine, a 19th century style device, it has a lot of hobnails, but then also a texture between them. White gold hands and white gold indices outboard on the chemin de fer, the railroad style minute track, and the white gold will never tarnish or oxidize. You can see that the hands are lovely, polished, baton-shaped, and rounded across their top. Perpetual calendar with the day, the date, the month, the leap year phase, the quantième bissextile, the leap year, the moon phase. The perpetual calendar does not need to be reset until the year 2100, and once set, the moon phase doesn't have to be touched for 122 years. Turn it all over. You can see there is a blackened rotor, blackened, and look carefully and you can see the form of the royal oak bezel itself in the rotor. I mentioned at the beginning this is the 2120/2802. So what we've got here is the Audemars Piguet version of JLC's ageless 920 Bausch, created in 1967 for Patek Vacheron and AP. The movement was only ever used by the Holy Trinity, never by JLC, never by JLC's other customers. So for a long time now, Audemars Piguet has built it in-house, and this movement here at the time, in the late 90s, I believe, was still being delivered from JLC in a kit form and then finished by AP, and the finishing is exquisite. You can see that the bevels are rounded and mirrored and perfectly hand-finished. There's snailing on a little bridge below the balance, showing the attention to detail. Screw heads all black polished with chamfered slots and circumference stripes or Côte de Genève perfectly aligned across the bridges. Black polished stud holder for the free-sprung Gyromax style balance, which adds stability against shock as well as the ability to set the watch very precisely. Unidirectional automatic winding with a 40-hour power reserve, a beat rate of 19,800 vibrations per hour, 38 pivot jewels, 2 more than the standard version of the movement. The entire movement with the Dubois de Praz Perpetual Calendar Moon Phase module and the JLC base. The whole movement is only 3.95 millimeters thick. You can see solarization on the crown wheel core as well as the ratchet wheel. The click has been mirror finished, and the base plate has engine turning. Now, there is actually a beryllium ring that goes all the way around this movement. The mass is on one side, but the ring goes all the way around, and it sits on 4 ruby roller bearings. And the idea is that because the ring is always in contact with the bearings, even under conditions of shock, the ring and the mass won't touch the base plate, and the rotor at center won't touch the bridges, keeping them unmarred and allowing them to be very close together for a thinner movement. A classically beautiful movement that's increasingly scarce, and one could say decreasingly common at Audemars Piguet because it's expensive to make and finish, but this watch is built cost no object. Don't worry, that's just a fingerprint. This is as good as it gets. A late 90s AP 39mm steel and platinum Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar with almost everything renewed by Audemars Piguet. Dial, case, bracelet, clasp. This is like owning the watch straight out of the vendor's case generations ago. Reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.